Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Darren Smith and Steve Walls. We're live here at Lincoln Financial Field as the Kansas City Chiefs have just defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 42-30 in front of a sellout crowd. Of course, with this win, the Kansas City Chiefs got Andy Reid his 100th win as the head coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's the only coach in NFL history that has 100 wins on two different franchises. Steve, your overall thoughts on today's ball game? Chiefs winning 42-30 against the Eagles.
We said it pregame. It was like, you know, if this team comes out here and only wins by a field goal, it's a failure.
Yeah.
You know, the way that when you look at how the Dallas Cowboys played the Philadelphia Eagles, Dak Prescott went off. And so I had said it earlier this week. I'm like, if Dak did that, what do you think Patrick Mahomes is going to do?
Or at least should do.
It should do. So DJ Khaled. You know, I just feel like that this team did what they needed to do, and especially getting Tyreek Hill involved. 11 receptions, 183 yards, man. Patrick Mahomes, 5 touchdowns. This is a type of win that this team needed. Yeah,
obviously, we go back to the first game. Tyreek Hill pretty much had a mirror image of what he did in the first game of the season, where he broke out for 11 catches, 180 plus yards. This win, though, you know, we talked about it pregame. For Kansas City to win, they needed to get pressure on Jalen Hurts. Mike Dana had 2 sacks in today's ball game. They forced him to. I thought he might have had an interception. I can't remember. I think they might have called that interception back. But I know the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes had an interception in today's ball game. But your thoughts on how the Chiefs performed defensively in today's game, because they still gave up a lot of yards. They gave up almost another 500-yard performance. But in the red zone, the team was able to, you know, after giving up a first touchdown early in the ball game, they pretty much held them to field goals within the red zone.
And it looks like it was going to be another one of those days, right? It looked like, you know, the way that this team came out, the Philadelphia Eagles struck first. They came out and kind of punched the defense in the mouth. And when you look at how the defense responded, it seemed to be a night and day type thing. They got better after, you know, they must have had some kind of chewing out on the sideline, because they got better. And they held the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, that's not saying much. But I mean, when you look at how Jalen Hurts,
they still scored 30 points, and the defense, they're still last in the bottom of the league, and they're still going to be last after today's game. I mean, there are things to take away from, some positives to take away from it. But there's still a lot of work that needs to get done defensively for the Kansas City Chiefs.
So you look how Jalen Hurts plays. This was a game that was similar to the Baltimore Ravens. Jalen Hurts, with the way that he does the RPO, the way that he's a threat running the football. Now he's the leading rusher for this team, right? So the Chiefs have problems. We can face it. They have problems with a mobile quarterback.
And be that as it may, look, Devontae Smith, former Heisman Trophy winner, I mentioned pregame that he was going to be someone that they needed to contend. He had 5 catches, 84 yards. Again, you know, I mean, there are good things to take away from this. You know, Jalen Hurts only had 1 touchdown. You know, 1 touchdown passing. Again, most of the damage that they did came from field goals, and then of course at the end of the ball game, let me make sure he had 1 touchdown. I want to speak ill of it, but be that as it may, and looking at the final stats, he had 2 touchdowns. I apologize, but he threw for 387 yards. Now, I asked you at halftime, and I don't know if your thought process has changed, but Chris Jones in today's ball game, your thoughts on whether or not he still needs to move back inside, but your thoughts on his play today?
I'm not sure that he's effective being on the outside. I don't feel like he's making the mark or the splash that this team thought that he would. I mean, last season, and even when you look at 2019, when he played on the inside, he was very effective. And now it's kind of like, Chris Jones, where are you? When they need a big play, Chris Jones, where are you? And I just don't feel like he's doing what they expected him to do. So I think they should at least take a look at it, him back on the inside. But with the play of Mike Dana, you need to still have someone that's on the other side. I don't know if that's going to be Alex Okafor. I don't know if that's going to be Frank Clark. But you need somebody. You can't just have Chris Jones sitting on the inside and no one else to work at least while Frank Clark is out.
You mentioned Frank Clark. Obviously, Mike Dana is in replacement of Frank Clark. I mean, right now we don't know how his hamstring's going to hold up. I know his other hamstring is giving him issues. I mean, we don't know what to expect week in and week speak out whether or not he's going to be available for the Kansas City Chiefs. But looking at the positive on the other side of the football for Kansas City, the offensive line, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they rushed for 200 yards as a unit. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 102 yards himself. Darrell Williams had 42 yards. Patrick had 26 yards. McCole Harmon, 25 yards. And Burton had, of course, the first down with the 5-yard plunge. Talk about this offensive line, what they were able to do, because they did have some problems early on. Lucas Niang and Orlando Brown were either giving up sacks or getting pressured put upon them by the defense.
When you look at how this offensive line has played as a whole, from game 1 to now game 4, they've gotten better. You've seen some positives. You've seen where, okay, you can kind of tell, all right, well, they're still young. They're still trying to mesh well together. So it's just going to take time. I think this is one of those games where you need some type of positives. You need some type of good film to let these guys know, hey, you can play in the NFL. And I don't think that's a question right now. Just because they've lost 2 games, they haven't really given up many sacks. Look, after what we saw in Tampa Bay at the end of last season, it's night and day, right? Yeah. You don't see the Patrick Mahomes scrambling for his life, running for 500 yards. You don't see that. Patrick gets out of the pocket when he has to. However, this offensive line, they've held up. I really believe they have.
One of the things that you talked about, and we've talked about over the last few years, that when they're winning, they're having fun, and they're having fun when they win, and how they're going about doing it.
It's funny how it's coming up now more than ever, right?
Yeah, and so want to make sure that you got a little bit of credit for that, because I asked Patrick about it post-game, of course, because it looked like they were because of how they put themselves in situation in Baltimore, and again last week against the Los Angeles Chargers at home, they didn't seem to really put themselves under a lot of under a lot of stress or a lot of pressure, to get things. Obviously, Patrick talked about having that interception at the worst possible time early in the ball game. I think when it was like 28-15, and they capitalized on that interception. I can't remember if they got a touchdown or an interception or a touchdown on that, but they were able to make a stand. They got the ball right back and then turn around, and then they continue to put up touchdowns. Do you see this team, based off of what they did today, getting Andy his 100th win, kind of getting back to having fun? Because obviously they're going to need to have fun, but they're also going to have to return to business next Sunday at home against Buffalo on Sunday Night Football.
It's kind of like the basketball analogy, right? It's like you need to see shots go in the basket before you're like, all right, I'm a shooter.
Yeah.
It's before I have the high hand. And that's what it is. It like Tyreek Hill earlier today. I mean, he had, 183 yards and only on 11 receptions. And I'm like, if he has a hot hand, are you going to continue to feed him? And Patrick's like, yeah,
but you got to do it every week. Yeah, he's trying to do it all the time.
So I think with that, and Patrick saying, like, all right, I can throw the ball over his shoulder and he's going to catch it with his hands. We saw that on the sideline. I mean, so you need to see that type of play. Now you have Josh Gordon coming in. Will that kind of change that dynamic? I don't really think so. But Clyde, I mean, he's had 2 back-to-back games. He's had back-to-back games with over 100 yards. So Darrell Williams has played well. So I think this team kind of needed that kick in the rear end, as Tyrann Mathieu would say, to get over the hump and to get over that get back into the win column.
Next up for the Kansas City Chiefs, they are 2-2. They're still at the bottom of the division no matter what happens tomorrow night between the Raiders and the Chargers. Next Sunday night, they host the Buffalo Bills. Sunday Night Football, Arrowhead Stadium. NBC, of course, will be there covering it live in living color. Be that as it may, what's your initial thought process on this game? Of course, Buffalo won their game at home against the Houston Texans. I mean, it's the Houston Texans. We know that they're having a down season, but they won convincingly. What do you see on this game coming up Sunday night?
Buffalo's going to try to come into Kansas City and dominate. They're going to offensively. The tape is out there. The tape is out there of how bad this defense is playing. They haven't played good in the red zone. They're not able really to stop the run. They've had trouble with RPOs. Josh Allen is good at that as well. So they're going to try to come in here and have their will. They're going to try to actually go into Kansas City and have their will. So I just feel like The Chiefs need to build off of this win. They watching film and making sure that you don't let Josh Allen get off early, because if he does, it's going to be a long day. If Buffalo comes in there, you defer, and they come out and they hit first, and then the offense is not able to go down and get a score, and they kick a field goal, Buffalo comes back down and scores, goes up 14-3. I think that's the ball game. I really do. You can't afford to have a guy like Josh Allen. He's a much better passer than Baker Mayfield. He's a much better passer than any of these other quarterbacks that they played. And there's no other receivers. Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs haven't faced a receiving core like Buffalo's this season.
Yeah.
This season. And I know people can say, well, Jarvis Landry, Odell, he was out that game, but I don't think they faced a quarterback quite like Josh Allen. And not only that, the Chiefs sent them home last season. So with all that, it's kind of like a storm's brewing, and they're going to come out there and try to hit the Chiefs in the mouth, and I just hope they're able to respond.
Again, Sunday Night Football, Arrowhead, Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills. Look, I mean, as we talked about, I mean, playoffs are pretty much started for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what it is, you know. But look, if they're having fun and they're doing the things, you know, Patrick 3 underhanded passes for touchdowns and stuff like that. Yeah. Kansas City, again, you know, can't take anything for granted. You've got to make sure that, you know, one, can't have missed tackles. They still had too many of those in today's ball game against the Eagles. Obviously, you hope that they can clean some of that stuff up. Right now, it's funny because you're glad that they got the win, because it kind of stops the bleeding, but it didn't stop the hemorrhaging, because there's a lot that they still need to do on the defensive side of the ball, offensively as well, because there were a lot of things that they need to get plugged up before next week's ball game. So for Steve Walsh, myself, Darren Smith, we want to thank you all for joining us. Make sure you tune in tomorrow night, the Red Hour, as we'll be live from the Soiree Steakhouse and Steak and Oyster House off of 18th and Vine. So for Steve Walsh, you can reach him at Steve Walsh KC. You can also catch his show, The W, on 100.1 FM on Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Of course, you can catch me, Darren Smith, at Darren_Smith, WHB, ESPN Kansas City, Monday through Fridays, 3 to 4 p.m. So until tomorrow, thank you for joining us.